Welcome. My name is Anna Wallace. I am an artist and an educator based in Durham, North Carolina. And today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a miniature weaving using really simple tools and supplies, all based around the size of a credit card. So here's a couple of finished weaving examples for some inspiration. So to get started, all we're going to be doing is using like an old credit card or library card or something that you have laying around like this. And take your scissors and your card, and we're going to make a series of slits on the top and the bottom. I think for a credit card, the best number is around 8 to 10 slits, evenly spaced on the top and the bottom. Done. So as you can see, there's just this line of slits on the top and the bottom. They don't go too deep. The second step is to take the really thin thread that was included in your kit. Take one end of it. So on one end, you will make a knot, and you just want to leave a little bit of a tail hanging. Just a simple, okay? And then you will take the credit card, and so determine which is the front and which is the back of your weaving, and therefore that you'll be using for the card. So this is going to be my front. So you want to pick the slit that is furthest to the left on your front, so that the knot just sits right below the slit. And now what we're going to do is warp our loom. So our thread is stuck in there, and we're going to start running it bottom to top. So when you go from the bottom to the top, then around the back side, you will run it so that it sits just that little line there, and then around the front again, you'll go back up to the top, again around the back, it'll be that little line, and keep going until you finish. So your front should look like this with all the straight warp lines. And in the back, you'll just see these little kind of half lines. So to finish up, wherever your warp thread ends, you just want to put a knot there as well. And again, leave a bit of a tail. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread so I'm able to make a knot easily. And just as best as you can, see that the knot sits right at the edge there of that. So we've got two little pieces hanging, and our loom is totally warped and ready to go. Okay, so now that we have our loom warped, we're ready to start weaving. And I'm going to show you guys the really simple tabby stitch, which is just going to be over, under, over, under. So you have your loom, you're going to want your nice needle with the big eye, this is the eye, and some yarn to start with. So you can go ahead and cut your yarn a couple arms length, like so. You don't want it super long because you have to pull it through the loom each time, and if you're just pulling forever, that'll be really irritating. So take one end of your yarn and just thread it through that big eye, and again just leave a little bit of a tail there dangling. The other end can just stay with no knot. You don't need a knot on this end. So you'll take your loom, and we're going to start on the bottom and work towards the top. It doesn't really matter if you start on the right or the left, that's personal preference. So I would recommend that you start under and then go over. So under, over, under, over, like so, until you get to the end. And then you can just pull your thread all the way through there. And then you can just pull your thread all the way through, leaving a little tail like this. And then I like to just go ahead and push it down so it sits there really nice and neat at the bottom. So when we go back for our second row, we're just going to alternate. So as you can see, my last row here was an under, so now I'm going to go over and just alternate like that. So you get to the full end of the row, and then again just pull. You don't want to tug too tight because it'll pull in these warp threads, so just keep it a little bit loose and then again push down. So here we have 2 full rows of the tabby stitch, and you can just keep doing that theoretically the entire weaving. So I'll do a couple more rows and show you what that looks like. Great. So there's a few rows of the tabby stitch. Now, whenever you're ready to change colors or you run at the end of your yarn, that's really simple. So I'll just go ahead and change colors here. I'm just going to, I could just even leave all of this, but I'm going to go ahead and just cut it, leaving a nice little tail again. Okay. And then when I get started again, it's just going to be like I'm starting at the bottom with just a new piece of yarn. Okay, so I'm ready to change colors. So I've got my needle with a new color already threaded on it with just a little bit of a tail and a couple arms length. It's my preference to start on the side that you don't have the dangly end on, so I'm going to start on this side. But there's not necessarily a right or wrong with that. But again, with the tabby stitch, we do want to alternate what our previous row was. So my last row here started as an under, so I'm going to go over the first time here. And again, I'll just pull it all the way to the end of that new thread, leaving a little bit of a tail. And again, just tabby stitch over, under, alternating on my way back. Sometimes stuff like that might happen. You can just undo it. Great, so now you've changed colors. You could do a few more rows like this, or change colors again as many times as you want. So I'll do a few more rows and show you what that looks like. Okay, so as you can see, I went ahead and finished my weaving. I changed colors a few times. I just used a pattern of, I think, 5 rows of the tabby stitch in this pink, 3 in the gray, and so on until I finished. And as you can see, I just left all my strings hanging, which is just fine. And I wove all the way up until I really couldn't fit any more rows, which is what you want to do, because when you do take the weaving off the loom, it is going to loosen up a little bit, so you want to weave it as tightly as possible while you can. So our next step is to take it off of the credit card loom. So what you're going to do is take advantage of the bendy nature of the credit card and bend it so that you're able to start with one of the loose ends and just start popping them off the little slits. It can be kind of tight and difficult at first, but once you start to get some of them come out, they should just kind of follow. Great, so now my weaving is off the loom. As you can see, it definitely loosened up a little bit, so you can kind of move your rows around so that it fits a little bit more evenly. And our next step is just going to be to weave in all of these loose ends. So what you want to do is take your smaller needle, or you can keep using your bigger needle if that works better for you. And one by one, including both the thin warp thread and your thicker weft yarn thread, you'll just thread those ends through your needle and then determine which is the front and which is the back of your weaving. And once you've determined what's going to be the back of your weaving, you will simply guide the needle through one of the stitches on the back so that it just kind of gets tucked in there. And then just take your scissors and snip it. And then it's just neatly hidden away, so the front doesn't show that at all. The back will have a bunch of those all tucked in. Okay, so I'll go ahead and finish doing the rest of those. Awesome. So I went ahead and tucked in all of my ends. So this is what the front of my weaving now looks like, and then this is what the back looks like. So everything's all tucked in and safe. And that's it. That's your weaving. So as you can see, I was very inspired by the Maria Molteni piece, who was inspired by Anna Wallace with these stripes. You can do whatever kind of pattern. You can do solid. You can change it up however you like, using the materials that you have or that you were given. And I also just wanted to point out that you can work in any scale. So while we were using a credit card in this case, you could also build a loom on something like a piece of cardboard, just cutting the slits on the top of the cardboard. And so you could work at any scale and come up with lots of different kind of stuff. You could even use different materials other than yarn. And then you could think about the Maria Molteni piece involves lots of little weavings actually woven together themselves and stitched together to create that basketball hoop. So you could make a bunch of different weavings and put them together in a creative way, so the possibilities are really endless.